Hi, I'm Professor Irwin Weil, and I teach Russian and Russian literature at Northwestern University here in Evanston, Illinois. I've been going to that huge country on the other side of the world for over 36 years and learned a thing or two, believe me. I'm sure you remember, as I do, the terrible old Stalinist days when people were arrested for no reason, when the secret police was all powerful, when they lied about things, when there was terrible hypocrisy, and life in general was very heavy and fraught with a very heavy kind of ideology. And of course, I'm sure you remember, as I do, the enormously surprising time when Gorbachev came to power, and with those magical words of glasnost and perestroika, began to create a somewhat different society. Party archives were opened, they began to tell the truth about various things, the educational system loosened up. In short, life was better. As a matter of fact, we even saw, much to our surprise, inmates of the infamous Butyrka prison shoving ballots for the election through the bars which would count in the election. Now, in the film that you're about to see, a fascinating one with footage that's never been shown before, you're going to see some still dark and not very public aspects of that reality. You're going to see Russian prisons, you're going to see people on death row, psychiatric prisoners under terrible pressures, the kinds of pressures that could lead to a revolt and some terrible things in the Russian world. We think that the Russian people, with all of their talent, can face these problems and can use them to deal with a society that was changing in a very, very complex way. To put it more briefly, we come to it as friends in the hope that partly with this film and partly with other things, we can make something better.
This is the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Chicago. Even here in front of this building, we are reluctant to speak about the death penalty, the topic of our choice. Many states do not have the death penalty at all, but as we all know, the controversy over the death penalty is far from being over. While some Americans cheer the move to abolish capital punishment, others are convinced that it is a necessary safeguard for society. The relatively recent phenomenon of blood-curdling, heinous serial murders and the alarming increase in world terrorism are two extreme developments emphasized by supporters of the death penalty. Nevertheless, there is still a lack of agreement among us as to the effectiveness and the deterring impact of capital punishment. Some believe that the recent cry for the death penalty in our country comes more from the need for revenge than for justice. According to the polls, unlike Europeans, approximately 3/4 of all Americans favor capital punishment today. The death sentence in America is not something kept secret. Everyone knows where and how the person is going to be executed. And that's not all. If they wish to, family members can be present during the execution. While the controversy over the death penalty has been very much alive over the past decades, the public momentarily discovered and soon after lost interest in prisons. 20 years ago, Chief Justice Warren Burger concluded that Americans continued to brush under the rug the problems of those who are found guilty and subject to criminal sentence. In a very immature way, we seem to want to remove the problem from public consciousness. In part, this may be true of us today, but it could not be more true of present-day Russia, where the remains of the political system continue to shroud the issue of confinement and execution in secrecy. Today, our cameras will take you to Moscow, where you will visit people on death row in the maximum security Butyrskaya prison known as Butyrka. Quite frankly, the purpose of our investigation was to find out where and how capital punishment was being carried out in Russia. It is for you to judge how well we succeeded. These corridors exist in most of the larger Russian cities, and specifically in most of the bigger Russian prisons. It is here that those sentenced to death await their fate. There are quite a lot of them. While society is in a state of shock over the horrendous cruelty of the more recent crimes, the sounds of the shots, perhaps fair retribution for outrageous atrocities, is drowned in the havoc caused by unending ethnic conflicts and political and economic crises.
Чем ниже
The lower the value a country or state places on human life, the more often it resorts to the death penalty as a means of punishment.
страны или государства
This century in general has been characterized by major upheavals, incessant wars, and revolutions.
характерен
Each of them may have had in mind rather humane goals, but in achieving these goals, they caused bloodshed and death. All of this led to death no longer being perceived as an event of any significance, and to life losing all value.
этой цели через кровь, через смерть и так далее.
It is not without reason that we gave the floor to somebody who worked for the former KGB. This man must know what he is talking about.
Ты знаешь о том, как производится?
Do you know how an execution is carried out?
Ну, как мне подумать?
Well, I read about it in books, but not here. First, they read the sentence, then shoot the prisoner in the head, put the body in a tub filled with acid, and open the plug. I mean, after the body is dissolved.
Кислоту и запускают. Ну, это когда труп растворится. А ты читал об этом?
Did you actually read this? What do other prisoners say about it?
Находился-
Nobody knows for sure.
Ну, никто не знает точно.
You will find the Butyrka prison, one of the largest in Moscow, not far from the downtown area of the city, next to the Savyolovsky railway station. Back in 1957, Nikita Khrushchev announced the plan to close down Butyrka, as well as all the forced labor camps in the Soviet Union. But then, a simpler solution was found to improve the image of the evil empire in the eyes of the West. An apartment house was built in front of the prison entrance, blocking the view of it from the street. All of its tenants are employed by the KGB or the Ministry of Interior. The prison continues to operate as it did 40 years ago. You will now have the good fortune to meet another recognized corrections expert. It is Colonel Oreshkin, the man in charge of Butyrka.
Действительно, это очень
Is it
накладно.
true that carrying out an execution is a costly enterprise for the country?
Ну, я не занимаюсь
We do not perform the executions here.
договором.
Так мы прекрасно
We
понимаем,
understand this very well. We are addressing you as an expert. An execution doesn't actually cost that much, does it?
Да я думаю, что нет.
I doubt that it does.
У нас нет.
Our law specifies clearly that executions are performed by a firing squad. I don't think that this could be a great expense worth mentioning.
Мероприятий, чтобы говорить об этом.
Killing has always been an inalienable part of Soviet life, but in such a way that ordinary people did not suspect it at all. This tape, made public for the first time, captures Khrushchev and Brezhnev on a hunting spree. Doesn't this look more like an execution? Despite the bloodshed and the extreme ruthlessness of this period in Russia's history, a blind admiration for its leaders warmed the chilled souls of men in the trenches of the Civil War and later World War II. Quite likely without even being aware of it, they defended the foundations of so-called Soviet ethics. In the 30s, the cult of cruelty, permeated with the fervor of what was perceived by many as just retribution, reached its climax. It is dangerous for society to appropriate the right to make premeditated killing a useful means to certain political and social ends. Capital punishment is always potentially an instrument of social repression and political terrorism. Its professed purpose as safeguard for society and deterrent of crime was abused from the first days of Soviet power. Prosecute and shoot them like mangy dogs. The fate of these enemies of the people has already been decided. Their fate has been sealed by the jubilation and the wild round of applause which follows this hysterical outcry by Vyshinsky, the country's general prosecutor and a major political player. These Soviet people of the late 30s could have just as well have been listening to a popular song or a concert of classical music and not to the announcement of a death verdict. True enough, there were some successes, but many of them were achieved by the forced slave labor of millions of prisoners whose lives had no real value. Many of these people were shot immediately after the reading of the sentence.
Пыталось государство. И как бы ни пытались отдельные
And no matter how hard the state, or rather some of its political leaders, tried to exclude the death penalty as the ultimate punishment from the criminal code, nothing came of these efforts.
практически ничего не получалось.
The death penalty always survived. It generated evil, while this evil generated the death penalty.
порождала смертную казнь.
When do they take prisoners out to be shot? In the morning or in the evening? Rumor has it they do it on Saturdays, but no one knows for sure. I bet they do it when they get here. You sound quite calm about the issue. Yeah, at first this is all you can think about, but with time you get used to the idea. I mean, to an extent. You become somehow indifferent. It may be all for the better. Do you know where the executions take place? How could we know? When we've been there, we'll be sure to tell you.
Вам никогда никто не скажет.
Nobody will ever tell you where the executions take place, just as no one will tell you who pulls the trigger, because those who do it are also people.
Нет, и где
They won't even say where? Of course not. The men are only doing their job.
Стреляет в затылок.
Is it true that the executioner shoots the inmate in the back of the head? Didn't I already tell you that I am not involved in carrying out the death sentence? Anyway, all these are details. They're irrelevant. Whether he is shot in the heart or in the head, or he gets a dozen bullets at once, what difference does it make?
10 пуль в него садит или сразу 2 обоймы, 16.
Hundreds of similar spots have been uncovered during the last few years in different parts of the former Soviet Union. Whose son, father, husband, or brother was this man? In most cases, the question remains unanswered. Tell me, why aren't the bodies of those executed given to their families? Or perhaps this rule has changed? No, it hasn't.
Почему? Как вы считаете?
This is a complicated issue. Maybe in the future they will be, but now they're not.
Сейчас трупа нет.
What is done with the bodies then? They're buried.
За что?
What are you in for?
Вменяет?
Well, I'm accused of murder. 3 men. That's what they pinned on me.
Вменяет.
The cell is dirty, filthy, and loathsome. It is practically barren and has no adequate heat. The toilet and sink are encrusted with slime and human excrement. The cell reeks from the stench of bodily wastes. Each cell measures 6 by 8.5 feet.
Обжалование.
How far along is your case in the legal process?
Ну, закон уже.
Well, the verdict has been passed. To appeal, it would be a waste of time. We who are accustomed to trial by jury, effective legal defense by qualified attorneys, long deliberations in court, the right to numerous appeals and years spent by convicted felons on death row to avoid the irrevocable measure, are bound to be bewildered, to say the least, by the Russian legal system.
Ничто тебя
Do you feel that nothing can save your life? You won't be forgiven?
дело не в помилуй.
I'm not asking for forgiveness.
Помиловать.
I'm only asking to be prosecuted by law.
Чтобы меня судили по закону.
Here I sit before you, but I am a totally innocent man, believe it or not.
Вообще нет.
Nobody cares.
Можете вот поверить.
No one wants to sort out this mess.
И никто не хочет об этом вообще копать. Это всё. Я написал.
I appealed to the Supreme Court. I explained why I was unable to testify in court, but no one showed any interest. I think it is impossible to break through this legal shield unless you have somebody's backing.
Вообще, я
For your information, no lawyer ever came to see me. I have no idea how to write an appeal.
Они вообще не ходят. Я не знаю, как это
I have nobody to ask for advice.
написать жалобу. Ну, я имею в виду основано на законе УПК.
This is my second year in the cell.
Сижу уже второй год вот такой одиночке и
Where can I seek justice? Here, in the United States, criminal defendants have a constitutional right to appointed counsel if they cannot afford their own attorney. It is not up to us to speculate on whether this young Russian is guilty or innocent, as he claims to be. But the fact that he has not seen or been able to consult an attorney about his appeal tells us something about the system. In Russia, the prisoner continues to be seen by other inmates, wardens, and judges as the slave of the state. And therefore, what takes place behind prison walls is not the subject of judicial concern. He is wholly stripped of his constitutional protection when he is imprisoned. This accounts for the inhuman physical conditions inmates are kept in. In Russia, as elsewhere, it is proclaimed that prison rehabilitates. Without a doubt, all such a prison can do is punish.
А Библию прочитал?
Have you read the Bible?
А что?
I just finished reading the book of the Hebrews. I'm almost through with Revelation.
Все, сейчас.
Before jail, were you a believer? I believed in God, but I knew little about religion. I only felt his presence. Do you think he may be punishing you for something?
Наказывает.
Quite possibly.
Ну, возможно.
You see, I'm coughing too because you're chain smoking here, and so am I. Don't you see we haven't got a single cigarette over here? All I need is a doctor. You'll have a doctor, don't worry. There's no one to see you right now. Monday will be Guibadulin's shift. This promise sounds almost like a threat. One only wonders what Guibadulin's true role might be. For all we know, he may be the dreaded executioner. Couldn't we at least have some vitamins? And boss, what about a walk outside at least once a month? I've been in the slammer for 2 years and haven't been outside even once. Next Sunday, if I'm around, I'll see what I can do about it. You guys have been figuring out what you can do about it for the past 2 years. This is the first time you've mentioned it. We complain about it every time we see you. That's not true. You never spoke to me about going out. Anyway, it's strictly forbidden for the likes of you. Why is it forbidden? What do you mean, why? There's a regulation, there's a law. Sure, you can ask me to try and find a way. That would be a totally different thing. Please try and find a way. Now you said it right. If we're not allowed to have visitors, we'll see what can be done about it. Only make sure you behave well. How are they behaving themselves? All sorts of things happen. Well, that's clear. All of them are young guys, and they sometimes don't know what to do with their emotions, right? One of the most devastating aspects of loss of freedom is the loss of the ability to control any aspect of one's daily life. Bearing this in mind, the words of the prison administrator about the prisoners never mentioning how much they wanted to go outside appear particularly cynical. So when do you think they'll come for you? Who knows? Maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow. Have you lost all hope? I think one loses hope only at the last minute. There's always a chance. One can't live completely without hope. You say the Supreme Court denied your appeal? Yes, it did. What about the president? I wrote to the Supreme Soviet, but they haven't made a decision yet. Is this your first conviction? Second. Well, I bet you talked among yourselves how prisoners are put to death. No, I don't think anyone knows. One can only guess. But what do you think about it? They drive you away, shoot you, and that's that. Where do they take the inmates? Somewhere outside of Moscow. Then they don't do it in Moscow, eh? No, they don't. Have you by chance heard about those sentenced to death who are sent to work at uranium mines? No, not me. I'd rather be shot. This unequivocal response is not an expression of bravado, nor is it the prisoner's reaction to some unverifiable rumors. The young man apparently knows what he is talking about. The former Soviet, or present-day Russian correction system, boasts not of 1 or 2, but at least 41 such forced labor camps. Here is a map of such extermination camps presented in the first guidebook to prisons and concentration camps of the Soviet Union by the former prisoner of conscience, Avram Shifrin. Every dot on this map marks a camp from which almost no one ever comes out alive. These include open pit or underground uranium mines, uranium enrichment, and nuclear military plants. Many of those working in these conditions do not survive for more than 2 years. Who is in this picture? It's my daughter. How old is she? 3 years old. I mean now. How old was she when you last saw her? A month old. What then? Then I was put in jail. For what? I was charged with murder. Of whom? A young woman I knew. Did you do it? She was murdered, but I didn't do it. In the United States, there is a prevalent notion that the offender is sick. In the former Soviet Union, the offender was felt to be lacking the moral education he needed for honest participation in the socialist society. The Soviet Union no longer exists, at least for now, but the jails of present-day Russia are no different than the old Soviet jails, except maybe with even greater shortages and less financial support.
Меня обвинили в двойном убийстве.
I was charged with double homicide, my classmate and his grandmother.
Правосудие такое.
The justice system is such that they didn't so much as look into the case. Just listen to how the prosecutor described the entire atmosphere in court. He said, if we can't find the true killers, we'll have to prosecute someone who fits the description. How old were you when all this happened? I was 18. I recently turned 20. Wrote an appeal some time ago. You're wearing a cross. Do you believe in God? Yes, I do.
Да, верю.
Do you also believe in life after death? I believe that too.
Жизнь тоже верю. Ну, если Бог есть,
Then if there is a God, he should do something, shouldn't he?
ну и как вам сказать?
What can I say? Perhaps he did what was better for me. I mean, my being here.
Здесь нахожусь.
I came to understand a lot in these 2 years. Figured out what I did wrong in my previous life.
Вот эти 2 года, которые прошли, я многое понял в своей жизни, что был неправ в каких-то моментах. В каких?
So what was it?
Каких? Ну, жил.
I led a rather carefree life, never thought about the consequences.
Не думал о последствиях многих вещей. А если бы сейчас представил...
So if you were given a chance to start it all over again, how would you live?
Знаете, у меня сейчас мысли здесь такие.
I can't think straight right now, but I think I'd feel much closer to nature.
Природе проникся душой.
Вы знаете, как расстреливают?
Ну, это считается государственной тайной.
Do you now know how the shooting is done? Hey, this is considered to be a state secret. Have you given up on yourself? When a person is desperate, he is often indifferent. Are you indifferent? To yourself or to your own fate? Well, when there is indifference all around you, it makes you indifferent as well.
Равнодушие, оно и человека приводит к равнодушию.
The topic of ultimate disposition, a prison term for execution or death, is swept aside or hidden by a conspiracy of silence. The act of killing takes only a few minutes. Death row often takes years. Lives are in the balance on the row. Almost everyone is fighting to have a new trial. Almost everyone asserts his innocence.
Ну, как на сегодняшний день приводится смертная казнь, я...
No, I can't tell you how the death sentence is carried out today.
Это государственная тайна.
Yes, it is a state secret.
Это государственная тайна, хотя на Западе...
Though in many countries of the West, this is not considered secret information and is even widely known to the public. When you see a film about men being tried and sentenced to prison, there is always the crime and the guilt and the fear. We should not forget to add, there is also the heartbreak, the loneliness, the suppressed hopes and doubts. All of this is over for the inmates we have just seen interviewed. We have completed our conversations with the dead. All the prisoners who appear in this film have since been executed. We are not members of the jury, and it is not for us to decide which of them deserved such a severe punishment. We are merely ordinary people, and we consider any death worthy of grief, and the loss of any human soul deserving of sorrow. This impressive-looking building in downtown Chicago is a place most people prefer to avoid. It is the Cook County Jail. A lot is written in the United States about the things that are wrong with the country's prisons. Frankly speaking, Americans don't seem to be very happy with their correctional institutions. An acquaintance of mine, a model citizen in every respect, once said in a conversation something to this effect: if he was seriously threatened with jail, he would immediately leave everything behind, his family, his business, and take the first available plane to Brazil, where he would renounce his American citizenship. Brazil, he explained to me, is the only country he knows of which does not give anyone away. My friend may have exaggerated slightly for effect, but one thing is quite obvious. He really wouldn't want to go to jail. By the way, this person I am talking about was born in America. Among immigrants, there is often a totally different view of American prisons. Quite recently, one journalist from the Russian community spent several days in this particular jail. After he was set free, he wrote an article where he compared this institution with a Soviet vacation resort for cosmonauts, noting if there were some differences, they were not in the latter's favor. It seems to me that both these people, the American and the Russian, will find this script of interest. We will pay a visit to the psychiatric department of the infamous Butyrka prison in Moscow, where you will meet with convicts who most likely would not even be regarded as criminals in the United States. In its hundreds of years of existence, the Butyrka prison, the oldest in Moscow, has seen a wide variety of criminals. Strangely enough, the self-same Butyrka played host to those known in Russia since times immemorial as loonies, fools, or village idiots. For many years, such mentally unstable inmates were kept in the Pugachev Tower of Butyrka. Recently, they were moved to a new place, and they now occupy the entire floor of the psychiatric department. The patients are kept in the prison's hospital wards as they await mental evaluation and until a decision is made on whether they should be institutionalized. Here in the hospital wards of Butyrka, they undergo thorough observation.
Скажите, это вот и есть наблюдение?
Tell me, is this the observation ward? Yes, it is. How does it differ from other wards? Well, as you can see, it has no beds. The new patients are placed here for 1 or 2 days. You mean mental patients in an acute condition? Yes, those in an acute manic state. They could hurt themselves. That's why it is best to have the beds removed. Whatever these institutions may be called, correctional mental hospitals or hospitals for the criminally insane, they must have the physical characteristics of a prison so that maximum security required by law can be achieved. However, they must also be relatively free of the anti-therapeutic factors so common in prisons: crowding, neglect, solitary confinement, inadequate or excessive light, noise, poor ventilation, and enforced separation from family and friends. Every one of these simple rules are violated in the Butyrka prison.
В чем заключается наблюдение?
So what does the observation involve? Observation implies that particular attention is given to the patient by our nurses and physicians. What kind of attention? They bully us. Who bullies you? They hit us with bats. They bully us. What's your name? Rumyanov. Now, what are you unhappy about? No matter what you ask for, they won't give it to you. What did you ask for? I asked for matches. Didn't get them. We don't have blankets. Nothing to cover up with. That guy over there has epilepsy. They won't even check on him. Won't call the doctor. Won't call nobody. Tell me, do you think these are real doctors working here? This question is not incidental. One can only hope that none of these inmates are victims of Soviet psychiatric abuse, which was widely practiced starting in the 1950s and up until the late 1980s against political and religious dissenters. The argument was made that they posed a danger to society, more accurately, a danger to the regime, in that their views on human rights, their practice of religion, their nationalism or wish to emigrate, etc., were perceived as incompatible with the prevailing communist ideology and a threat to the status quo. Hospitalized by way of either a criminal or civil commitment, the detained dissenters had no right of appeal and no access to legal counsel. Drugs, particularly tranquilizers, were administered as an effective mode of punishment. One of them, sulfasen, had no therapeutic effect but caused the victim to suffer high fever and devastating pain throughout the body. A well-documented list of 346 political victims from 1977 to 1983 can be found in Soviet Psychiatric Abuse by Sidney Block and Peter Redway. Please pay special attention to this gesture. The prison staff obviously perceives inmates as secretive, manipulative, and untrustworthy. Inmates, in their turn, view staff as condescending and mean. Staff feels superior and righteous. while inmates feel inferior, weak, and guilty, no matter what they may say. As he learns his new stigmatized status and is deprived of his unique outside life, the prisoner learns the system of privileges. A few clearly defined privileges are offered in exchange for obedience to the rules. Punishment for breaking the rules is the withdrawal of privileges.
Ребят, вот вас трое,
Guys, there are 3 of you here, but only 2 cots. How do you sleep? One of us sleeps on the floor. I sleep on the floor. Aren't you cold? Of course I'm cold. My bones are all aching. One of us usually walks back and forth and another lies down. No one ever comes to see how we are. You can lie flat on your bed all day long for all they care. You will find a variety of people in these wards. Some of them have serious mental problems. Others most likely pretend to be ill. And before they are assigned for psychiatric evaluation, you need not doubt they will be offered medical assistance. Whatever assistance can possibly be provided in this prison hospital during investigation. How is the medical treatment here? It's okay. Do they give you medication? Sure they do. What kind? You know, they give us those little pills, red and white ones. Inmates respond to the system by adaptation. The inmate may simply ignore the institution, that is, situationally withdraw. In prison, it is called prison psychosis. He may adapt by rebelling, deliberately refusing to cooperate in any way. Or he may adapt by conversion, acting out the role of the perfect inmate. Sergei is one of such totally compliant inmates. He boasts of having spent time in every mental institution in Moscow and the Moscow region. He talks so fast and so much because he knows that the doctor and the journalist crew will walk off soon, and he wants to give them as much from his mind as he can. He cannot talk to the walls. His fellow inmates won't listen. He has very little chance to communicate with anyone. The doctor comes and gives him some pills. He trusts the doctor and takes them. The other inmates look as if they distrust the physician and will quite likely avoid taking the medication, because it could be the pills that make you nutty as a fruitcake, insists one inmate. What if I were the patient and I refused to take pills or agree to injection? What then? Then this will be done forcibly. What do you mean, forcibly? A special team will be summoned. Are you saying they would restrain my arms and legs and give me an injection? Exactly. Isn't it frightening? Raving schizophrenics are kept in the same ward with subdued, helpless manic depressives. There are many objective reasons for this state of affairs. There have never been any major repairs in Butyrka since its inception. The only question is, why should people who need treatment be kept in prison cells dating back to the times of Catherine the Great? As an aside, it was this enlightened 18th century monarch who proclaimed, "Nothing can make it necessary to take away the life of a citizen." What is wrong with him? His condition requires it. He has an inflammation in his left ear, but he constantly rips off the bandages. We can't stop the inflammation. He doesn't know what he's doing, does he? You're right, he doesn't. That's why we have to keep him in an isolation ward, because he bothers the other patients. Despite his assurances to the contrary, it is clear that the physician treating the psychotic inmate suffering from self-mutilation sees him as an intolerable troublemaker. The patient's illness is treated as a disciplinary problem, not a psychiatric one. What is he convicted for? Tell him, Sergei. For murder. First degree? First degree. Who did you murder? My parents. He's telling the truth. Why did you do it? I don't know. He forced me. Who did? Hitler. Tell me, have you been in solitary confinement before? Yes, I have. Knock on the wall. Have you tried to hurt yourself here?
головой, если только об стену.
One can only bang one's head against the wall or the floor. There's nothing more one can do. How long did they keep you in isolation? They usually put us here for about 2 or 3 hours, so we can calm ourselves. Were you handcuffed? No, they don't put us in handcuffs. Were you naked? Yes, I was. Why was this necessary? Why did they make you take off your clothes?
Ну, я так предполагаю,
Well, I suppose to help me calm down. When you're beside yourself, when you see red, being cold is soothing and sort of calms you down.
сюда сажают, а вроде когда голый, прохладный, вроде от холода вроде успокаивается. Ну, я
Or
может,
maybe there's
не-
something I don't understand. The Russian psychiatrist, Dr. Koryakin, who was sentenced to 7 years in jail for his disclosure of Soviet psychiatric abuse, is convinced that many thousands of dissenters have spent time in Soviet prisons and psychiatric hospitals. One of them, Leonid Plyushch, recalled the terrible effect of drugs used as punishment or intimidation. I was horrified to see how I deteriorated intellectually, morally, and emotionally. My speech became jerky and abrupt. I was soon unable to read or write.
Мы делаем свое дело. Там, как о нас думают, конечно, многие думают.
We do our own thing. People think differently about us.
По-разному обзывают.
Some call us torturers and fascists. Others frequently file complaints against us, saying that we do not provide the necessary medical assistance, and so on and so forth.
Оказывается, помощь.
All of this doesn't make much sense.
Всегда они у нас под присмотром.
У меня есть одна просьба, пока в камере мысль появилась.
It has occurred to me here in the cell, perhaps I'll even write about it to Yeltsin, that such mental patients as we are, who are placed here as part of the legal procedure, should bypass the prison altogether. There have got to be such institutions. Remember this Italian film they showed on TV? Guys had a better life there than in our rest homes, just like in the Crimea at the Black Sea Resort.
Люди, страдающие психическими заболеваниями, все чаще становятся объектом внимания со стороны преступных элементов.
Mental patients are more and more frequently attracting the attention of criminals. They are being involved in criminal gangs as potential scapegoats in the event that things go wrong.
Всю вину возложить именно на них. Но мы прежде всего врачи.
But we are first and foremost physicians, and we view these people primarily as our patients. We often get into conflict with the investigators and the prosecution.
Со следователями, с работниками суда и прокуратуры.
I'm not trying to put on airs. I mean it. In our eyes, they are first of all patients. We are mentally sick people. We shouldn't be here. This place isn't for us. Not for us, right? Some may find it outrageous, taking care of people who, though insane, are nevertheless murderers, serial killers, or rapists. But first of all, only a few of these prisoners have committed such serious crimes. Most of them have simply become puppets in the hands of hardened criminals because of their illness. Secondly, whatever our beliefs, these people are mentally ill and therefore require treatment. After everything we have just seen, is it possible to speak about criminal justice in Russia? About love for thy neighbor? About compassion? These words strike one as false and hypocritical. In the meantime, ripped by popular discontent and tired of unfulfilled promises, Russia is beginning to resemble a vast lunatic asylum, where there is plenty of room for those who are ill and those who are well. It is not without cause that we are showing you this brief episode at the end of the film, for it summarizes everything we talked about before: Russia, prison, hostages, and of course death. In the early 1970s, Americans witnessed a number of violent prison riots. 43 human beings died in New York's Attica Correctional Facility in September of 1971. The revolt of 7 inmates of the Kresti prison in St. Petersburg, known as Leningrad under communist rule, was an event considerably smaller in scope and, as was to be expected, had no coverage in the media. It was, or so it seems, an act of pure desperation. The Kresti is not only one of the largest, but also one of the oldest correctional institutions in Russia. It has been known for the exceptional deprivations and harsh conditions of its inmates, and the extreme cruelty of its wardens, the extent of which is remarkable even for a Russian prison. True, the common opinion is that only those who deserve such harsh punishment are incarcerated in Kresti: murderers, rapists, and hardened offenders. In other words, the scourge of the human race. Today, approximately 10,000 inmates are packed like sardines into overcrowded cells and rarely get to see the light of day. The tragedy which you will shortly witness occurred on February 23, 1992. But this is our first opportunity to show it on tape. By midday, 7 prisoners, for the most part very young men with long sentences, barricaded themselves in on one of the floors after taking 3 prison employees hostage. They had been driven to utter despair and had little to lose. Their demands were naive and confusing. They were basically asking for some mild improvements in the prison routine. You will now see and hear it for yourself. Just follow the events. Zora, think again before you do anything. I'm talking to all of you guys. Think again. It's not too late. There's still time. Stop it, do you hear me? Andre, I beg you. Andre, I beg you. I love you. Now listen to your wife, how much she loves you. Goodbye, Tanya. Don't say goodbye, you better think again. Goodbye, my darling, I love you. So you don't care, do you? I love you, you fool. You're young, you've got your whole life ahead of you. Do you know what your mother is going through? I couldn't care less. It is the waiting that many inmates on the row perceive as cruel and unusual punishment. Here you are, thrown in a tiny cell, with no idea whether you are going to be executed in the end or not, and if so, when. The only part of it that is under your control is being able to end it all sooner, and more or less of your own free will. Think it over. The final decision hasn't been made yet. I'm going to go put through another call to Moscow. Listen to me, you. You're going to kill us, you bastards. Calm him down, you guys. I understand he's in a wretched mood. He just talked to his wife. Alexander Romanovich, I spoke with you personally. I told you our demands, and you promised that by 1:30 they will be satisfied. Ladders? They should bring them over shortly. I can see one lying over there. It's my 3rd term in jail for carrying a knife. I already killed once. It's not so very frightening. We know that. Without any money, it's hard to survive after 10 or 15 years in the slammer. Such things happened many times, and the guys are alive and well. No, this would be very hard. They'll kill us, the bastards. The tragic dilemma of a despondent inmate is played out here to the fullest. Andre, just as the others, does not want to die, nor does he want to stay in prison for the rest of his life. Now, finally, they are in control, most likely for the last time of their lives. It's their last chance to be free of this, either really free, out doing what they want to do, being with their families, with people they love and care for, or free by being dead. Tanya, these stinkers will have us killed. I know that. You know. I'm happy to hear it. I love you, you fool. Alexander Romanovich, I'm asking you one thing only. If you want to avoid the consequences, order these guys in the helmets. He went to meet the prosecutor. And bulletproof vests not to come anywhere close. You in the white helmet, get behind the corner. Behind the corner. Get moving, you asshole. These ropes and hooks, you must understand that we can't win here. There will be dead bodies. A lot of them, you scum. What's going to happen to me? I'm a wreck. Nothing's going to happen. I tried to hang myself. They wouldn't let me. The rope broke, and they wouldn't let me, so I got into this mess. We'll set things right, don't worry. I'm not kidding. If I hear another joke from you, I'll blow everyone to pieces. I'm crazy, don't you get it? Have pity on your own. In the meantime, while the rebellious prisoners were being persuaded, coaxed, and patted on the back, down below under the windows and behind the corner, everyone was preparing to storm the building. It was not the inmates who set the rules of the game, and whether they admitted it to themselves or not, they were well aware of it.
Слышь,
Hey, that won't do. Move away, all of you. You over there, move. Get out of the way. Move away, boys, move away. Move over there, troopers. Get them out of here. Get all of them out of here. Where? There's nobody here. Get away from that car over there. Get it away, fast. He's just standing there. What's wrong? Get that car away. You will now see the ear or the head of a hostage flying down. We'll kill one right now. Troopers, get down. Troopers, get down. A special unit started storming the prison at 2:12 p.m., as you can tell from the digital code accompanying the film. Can you imagine the unequal struggle now taking place inside the building? Every one of these shots is made at close range, aimed to kill. Our cameraman was not allowed inside, and perhaps it was for the better. Thanks to the high professionalism of the attackers, the composure of the wardens, and the rebels' lack of expertise, everything was over relatively soon. Hey, quiet, it's us. Why did they do it? Give her a shot. Is it okay? Did you get them all out of that room? They're both alive. That woman is doing fine. That one is alive. Give me 2 pairs of handcuffs. The hell with him. Give me his hands. What are you talking about? He looks like a piece of shit. Victor Alexandrovich, take them all out of here. Take them out. Is he alive? They're both as good as dead. What did you do with my cap? We got this one. Where did he come from? The bastard, I shot him several times. What looked like a well-planned and brutal terrorist attack in the beginning, at close range turned out to be more like a group suicide. An act of liberation through death. Because, as a prisoner on the row at the Texas State Prison aptly put it, once you're dead, you're no longer suffering. Death is the ultimate. Move along, you lousy bastard. We have given you a glimpse of the present-day Russian reality from a very special angle. This is just a fragment of the problems faced by the Russian people on their difficult road towards democracy and a normal civilized existence. Despite a commitment to the Council of Europe that would put a moratorium to executions, Yeltsin is sending convicted murderers to face firing squads in greater numbers than at any other time since the collapse of the Soviet Empire, according to Lev Razgon, a member of the Pardons Commission convened by Yeltsin in 1991. Of course, only a relatively small part of the nation is directly affected by these issues. However, any one of the society's most acute problems reflects the totality of its problems, just as a piece of a shattered mirror reflects the entire world. Besides, there is a centuries-old wise Russian proverb which says, one should never assume he is immune to poverty or prison. It has been confirmed so many times by their history that the Russian people remember this proverb only too well.